I'm Isaac Caldwell, 42 years old, and for the past 6 years, I have served as the operations manager at Lexington Manufacturing. Throughout my tenure, I've dedicated myself to refining and optimizing our processes, always aiming to enhance efficiency and drive measurable financial impact. One of the highlights of my career here was overseeing a series of process improvements that collectively saved the company roughly $2 million every year, a result achieved through a combination of workflow redesign, vendor renegotiations, and tighter quality control measures. My role has been multifaceted, managing a team of 35 employees, coordinating cross-departmental projects, and ensuring that our production lines ran smoothly without costly downtime. I have always maintained a professional demeanor and kept detailed records of my performance outcomes, knowing that documentation is as vital as leadership in a corporate environment. My daily routine involved not only supervising operations, but also analyzing data trends, identifying bottlenecks, and mentoring junior staff to build a stronger, more capable team. Given my extensive experience and proven track record, I had naturally anticipated progression within the company. I understood the promotion policies well. They require a minimum of 2 years' experience in a relevant role before consideration for a senior position. This policy ensures that promotions are merit-based and that candidates have sufficient operational knowledge to justify new responsibilities. Over the years, I had meticulously aligned my work and professional development to meet and exceed these criteria. However, things took an unexpected turn recently when my direct manager, Daniel Harper, made a decision that caught me off guard. Daniel promoted his son, Ethan Harper, who had been with the company only 4 months, to the senior operations role I had been aiming for. This was a clear departure from established company policy, and it disregarded the years I had invested. The irony was not lost on me, especially considering I had personally mentored Ethan during his initial months, investing over 100 hours into his training and onboarding. Despite the shock, I maintained composure. When Daniel informed me of his decision, I calmly replied, "Understood." There was no emotional outburst or confrontation. Instead, I internally catalogued the irregularity. I recognized that such nepotistic favoritism was not only unprofessional, but also likely in violation of the company's written promotion guidelines. I already began formulating a strategic response in my mind. This was not a matter of personal grievance, but of professional principle and contractual adherence. At that moment, I consciously switched into analytical mode. I considered the implications of the promotion on my career trajectory, my contractual rights, and the operational integrity of the department. I knew that reacting emotionally would only undermine my position. Instead, I resolved to approach this challenge with the same diligence and professionalism that had defined my career thus far. Internally, I reviewed what I knew of the company's HR policies, the promotion procedures, and the anti-nepotism clauses embedded in the employee handbook. Given Ethan's limited tenure and experience, Daniel's decision was clearly in conflict with the standards required for such a role. I understood that the company also had severance provisions and protection clauses for employees in my position, details I was already familiar with from prior consultations and contract reviews. As I left that meeting, I began mentally assembling all the data points I would need to build a coherent, evidence-based case to address this situation. This included employment contracts, email correspondence, performance reports, and the extensive mentorship logs I had maintained for Ethan. I also anticipated that any effective response would require engaging legal counsel and possibly regulatory bodies to ensure that the company adhered to its own policies and the applicable labor laws. While the immediate reaction might have been frustration or disappointment, I consciously chose to channel those emotions into strategic planning. I recognized that the best leverage I had was my professional credibility, my documentation, and my understanding of the company's contractual framework. I was determined to ensure that merit and integrity, rather than nepotism, would ultimately prevail. In essence, my response at that moment was not simply about a promotion denied, but about standing firm on the principles of fairness, transparency, and contractual obligation. I knew the road ahead would require patience, precision, and professionalism, but I was ready to navigate it systematically, prepared to protect my interests and set a precedent for accountability within the company. So when I said, "Understood," it was more than just a courteous acceptance. It was a calm signal that the situation had been noted, analyzed, and that a calculated course of action was already taking shape, one built on evidence, strategy, and unwavering professionalism. Over the course of 6 years at Lexington Manufacturing, I steadily climbed the ranks, earning 3 promotions that reflected my growing expertise and consistent delivery of results. Each step up was backed by demonstrable achievements and a commitment to operational excellence. When I was appointed operations manager, it wasn't by chance. It was because I had proven my capability to lead and innovate within complex manufacturing processes. One of my most significant accomplishments was spearheading a $3.5 million enterprise resource planning (ERP) system implementation. This was a complex, cross-functional project involving IT, procurement, production, and finance teams. I managed timelines, coordinated training sessions, and mitigated risks associated with system downtime during the transition. The result? A 15% reduction in operational downtime within the first year, which translated into substantial cost savings for the company. These improvements didn't just impact the bottom line, they improved our capacity to meet client deadlines and enhanced overall workflow efficiency. My annual salary reflected my contributions, set at $118,000, with a bonus structure intricately tied to cost savings and operational KPIs. I understood the importance of quantifying my impact, so I maintained detailed reports documenting every workflow optimization, vendor negotiation, and process redesign that contributed to the company's profitability. These documents formed a comprehensive portfolio of my professional value, underscoring my role as a key player in Lexington's success. Beyond the numbers, I devoted considerable time to mentoring junior staff, particularly Ethan Harper, who joined the company 4 months ago. Recognizing that a robust team is vital for sustained operational success, I invested over 120 hours personally training Ethan. This mentorship included walkthroughs of complex system architecture, hands-on troubleshooting sessions, and regular feedback meetings. I was transparent about expectations and encouraged him to build his technical competence and leadership skills gradually, knowing that such foundational knowledge was essential before someone could occupy a senior operations role. In the department, I built strong professional relationships, not only with my direct reports but also with clients and cross-functional stakeholders. My consistent communication and collaborative problem-solving earned their trust and respect. I frequently led operational reviews and presented performance data to upper management, always backing my recommendations with clear, data-driven insights. This network of professional goodwill positioned me as an indispensable asset within Lexington Manufacturing. I was well versed in the company's promotion policy, which stipulated a minimum of 2 years' experience in relevant roles before an employee could be considered for promotion to senior positions. This policy was designed to ensure that promotions were merit-based, reflecting both operational knowledge and leadership ability. Over time, I had aligned my career development accordingly, deliberately pacing my professional growth to meet these standards. I also kept my performance evaluations and personal development plans up to date, frequently reviewing them to identify areas for improvement. Mentoring Ethan added a layer of complexity when Daniel Harper bypassed these established guidelines and promoted his son to the senior operations role that I had been preparing for. Despite Ethan's limited time at the company, only 4 months, Daniel fast-tracked his promotion, dismissing both the tenure requirement and Ethan's developmental progress. It was an unsettling move, especially since I had personally invested in preparing Ethan for a future role, not expecting this sudden leap. When Daniel informed me of this decision, I maintained my professionalism. I responded with a calm, measured understood, avoiding any emotional reaction that could be construed as unprofessional or reactive. Internally, I catalogued this deviation from policy as a critical irregularity, a red flag that required a systematic response. I was acutely aware that such decisions could undermine not only my position, but also operational integrity and fairness within the company. From that moment, I switched gears into analytical mode, considering the ramifications on my career trajectory, contractual rights, and departmental stability. I reviewed the promotional policy, company bylaws, and anti-nepotism clauses embedded in the employee handbook. I understood well that Ethan's rapid advancement contravened these protocols. Furthermore, I knew the company's severance provisions offered protections in cases where promotions bypassed internal candidates, which could become a significant point of leverage. As I left the meeting, I began mentally assembling all the documentation that would underpin any professional challenge I might need to raise: performance reports, mentorship logs, email correspondence, and my employment contract. I also recognized the importance of legal consultation and anticipated the possible involvement of regulatory bodies if the company failed to comply with established policies. My approach was strategic and methodical. I chose to channel any frustration into a calm, evidence-based response, relying on professionalism and precise documentation. I was determined that meritocracy and contractual adherence, not nepotism, would guide the resolution of this situation. In essence, my composed reply of "understood" was a deliberate signal. It communicated that the situation was acknowledged, analyzed, and that a calculated professional response was already in motion, one grounded in facts, strategy, and unwavering commitment to integrity. Daniel Harper's decision to promote his son Ethan so rapidly wasn't made in a vacuum. Over the past several quarters, I had observed increasing pressure on him from the company's board of directors. The board had explicitly demanded cost reductions and insisted on enhancing the Harper family's influence within Lexington Manufacturing's leadership. It was no secret that Daniel's standing hinged on demonstrating both financial prudence and consolidating his family's control. This context helped me understand the underlying motivations behind what otherwise appeared to be a blatant breach of protocol. Daniel's response was to fast-track Ethan's promotion from a junior operations analyst to a senior operations role within just 4 months of his hiring. This was a significant leap, especially considering the company's promotional guidelines, which require a minimum of 2 years' experience in relevant roles before any employee is eligible for such advancement. By accelerating Ethan's elevation, Daniel effectively bypassed these policies and disregarded the merit-based system the company had painstakingly developed over the years. It was a clear circumvention, designed to prioritize family influence over operational competence. More troubling still was Daniel's apparent disregard for the company's anti-nepotism policies. Lexington Manufacturing's employee handbook contains specific clauses aimed at preventing conflicts of interest and favoritism. These policies explicitly prohibit preferential treatment on the basis of familial relationships, particularly in promotion decisions. Yet, Daniel ignored these rules. I reviewed the relevant HR documents and found that nepotism violations required formal disclosure to the compliance board and often triggered procedural reviews before any promotion could be finalized. None of these steps had been followed in Ethan's case. Daniel's move also overlooked critical contractual obligations. The company's severance clause, embedded in all employment contracts including mine, promised a 6-month salary payout if an internal candidate was bypassed for promotion in favor of an external or less qualified individual. By promoting Ethan, who had only been with the company for 4 months and lacked the operational experience necessary for the role, Daniel was effectively triggering a situation where I was contractually entitled to severance compensation. It was a financial liability he seemingly either ignored or underestimated. From a technical standpoint, Daniel also failed to consider the operational ramifications of his decision. Ethan had not yet been granted access to several critical system credentials and databases that I managed as operations manager. These access controls are essential for ensuring smooth workflow and safeguarding sensitive data. I am the only person with full operational authority over these systems, a fact that Daniel clearly underestimated. I knew that without proper access, Ethan's ability to manage the department effectively was compromised, raising serious risks for operational continuity. Additionally, Daniel's wife, a corporate lawyer, was surprisingly unaware of these breaches and contractual vulnerabilities. I had indirectly become aware of this through informal channels and internal knowledge exchanges within the company. This lack of legal oversight from within the family possibly contributed to the ease with which Daniel bypassed established policies. Had she been fully informed, I suspect the situation might have been handled with more procedural rigor and legal caution. Daniel's focus seemed to rest solely on consolidating family control and responding to board pressure, neglecting the broader consequences of his actions. His fast-tracking of Ethan not only violated company policy, but also exposed Lexington Manufacturing to compliance risks, potential financial penalties, and operational instability. It was a short-sighted gambit prioritizing immediate familial advantage over long-term corporate governance. While I was initially stunned by the promotion's abruptness, my professional instincts immediately kicked in. I recognized that Daniel's maneuver was fraught with procedural errors and contractual violations. This presented leverage points that I could systematically document and later use to challenge the decision through formal channels. I mentally mapped out the policy infractions, severance implications, and operational risks, preparing to build a comprehensive case grounded in evidence. At no point did I consider reacting impulsively. Instead, I maintained professional detachment, knowing that an objective, well-documented response would carry far more weight than any emotional confrontation. I planned to gather all relevant documentation, contracts, emails, system access logs, and mentorship records, to expose the irregularities in Daniel's approach and protect my professional standing. In summary, Daniel's motivations were clear. He was responding to external pressures and personal ambitions by bending corporate rules to favor his son. However, his oversight of contractual clauses, neglect of operational dependencies, and disregard for anti-nepotism guidelines created vulnerabilities that I intended to exploit systematically. The promotion was not just an unfair slight against me, it was a breach of governance and fiduciary responsibility that demanded a measured, evidence-based professional response. This analysis shaped my strategic thinking moving forward. I resolved to pursue a path grounded in professional integrity, comprehensive documentation, and legal scrutiny. Daniel's short-sightedness had opened a door for me, not just to claim the recognition and compensation I rightfully earned, but to uphold the principles of meritocracy and corporate governance within Lexington Manufacturing. After Daniel's announcement, I immediately turned my focus to a thorough review of all relevant documentation related to my employment status, termination options, and Ethan's promotion. I requested and obtained copies of the official termination paperwork that had been quietly prepared, as well as the internal memos and formal promotion letters related to Ethan's sudden elevation to senior operations. This was the foundational step. Without concrete evidence, any professional challenge would be impossible to sustain. The moment I started going through these documents in detail, multiple red flags became immediately apparent. First and foremost, the promotion policy was conspicuously ignored. The company's written guidelines require a minimum of 2 years' experience in a relevant role before consideration for promotion to senior operational positions. Ethan had been on staff for only 4 months, less than a quarter of the required tenure. There was no mention of any exception or fast-track provision in the policy documents. No formal justification had been documented to explain this deviation. The promotion memo was brief and lacked the usual detailed assessment that accompanies legitimate internal promotions. Equally troubling was the absence of any severance offer or discussion in my termination paperwork. My employment contract clearly stipulates a severance clause that guarantees 6 months' salary if an internal candidate is bypassed for promotion in favor of a less qualified or external hire. This clause protects employees who have vested interests and aligns with fair labor practices. Yet the termination papers I received contained no reference to severance benefits. It was a glaring omission, one that contradicted the protections afforded by the contract I had signed and the company's own standard procedures. Further examination revealed that my salary and associated bonus allocations had been restructured without any formal approval from the board of directors. Financial records showed that the $35,000 annual bonus I would have earned under the cost savings framework had been redirected to Ethan's compensation package. There was no documentation indicating any board resolution or HR approval for this salary reallocation. This suggested an informal, potentially unauthorized fiscal maneuver designed to benefit Ethan at my expense. I made copies of the payroll summaries and bonus distribution spreadsheets to cross-reference these findings. The discovery process didn't stop there. As I accessed internal email threads and communication logs, I uncovered a disturbing pattern. Daniel had explicitly instructed HR personnel to exclude me from key meetings regarding operational strategy and promotion discussions. One email, dated several weeks prior to the promotion, showed Daniel directing HR to limit Isaac's involvement to routine updates only and to keep promotion plans confidential until finalized. This exclusionary behavior was a direct violation of company norms that encourage transparency and collaborative decision-making. It signaled a deliberate effort to marginalize me and ensure the promotion proceeded without my input or objection. I also examined the company's bylaws and regulatory compliance guidelines, which required nepotism disclosures whenever family members were involved in leadership decisions. The absence of any nepotism declaration or compliance board notification was a serious breach. The employee handbook clearly states that all such cases must be reported and reviewed to prevent conflicts of interest. This lack of procedural adherence opened a compliance vulnerability that I could leverage. Moreover, I had maintained extensive mentorship logs detailing the 120 hours I personally invested in training Ethan. These records included dated session notes, topics covered, ranging from system architecture to workflow optimization, and email exchanges, where I provided feedback and guidance. The documentation underscored my superior qualifications and highlighted Ethan's developmental stage, which was still far from readiness for a senior leadership role. I prepared extracts of these logs to demonstrate that my expertise and experience far exceeded Ethan's, further strengthening the case against his premature promotion. Cross-referencing all this information, I identified several critical leverage points. 1. Promotion policy violation. The 2-year minimum requirement was blatantly ignored without formal exception or documented rationale. 2. Severance clause. Ignored. My contract's 6-month severance guarantee was not honored, despite the contractual trigger conditions being met due to bypassing an internal candidate. 3. Unauthorized salary reallocation. Bonus and salary changes were unapproved by the board, indicating possible corporate governance violations. 4. Nepotism policy breach. Absence of any nepotism, disclosure, or compliance review represented a regulatory infraction. 5. Deliberate exclusion. Email evidence of intentional marginalization from operational decisions and promotional processes. 6. Mentorship. Documentation. Records proved my deeper operational knowledge and mentorship role contrasted sharply with Ethan's inexperience. Each of these points was a piece of a complex puzzle, revealing systemic irregularities. My approach was to remain methodical and detached. No assumptions, only facts supported by documentation. I organized the materials into a comprehensive dossier, categorizing contracts, emails, financial reports, and mentorship records for easy reference. This initial assessment was vital. It confirmed that Daniel's actions were not simply unwelcome, but constituted clear violations of company policy, contractual obligations, and regulatory standards. It also underscored my position of strength. With this evidence, I could hold the company accountable, enforce my contractual rights, and expose the nepotistic malpractice that endangered operational integrity. At this stage, I was fully aware that the situation required discretion and strategic patience. The findings compelled me to prepare for a formal challenge, knowing that any premature move could jeopardize my position or the eventual outcome. Instead of confrontation, my priority was to systematically build an irrefutable case grounded in the company's own rules and the legal framework that governed employment relations. In essence, this review was the foundation of my professional response, a step beyond personal grievance toward structured, evidence-driven action. The irregularities I uncovered formed the critical justification for pursuing all necessary channels, from internal compliance to legal recourse, ensuring that the principles of fairness and meritocracy were upheld. This was about protecting not only my career, but the integrity of Lexington Manufacturing's governance. After completing my detailed review of the termination paperwork, promotion memos, and internal communications, it was clear to me that this was going to be a complex professional challenge, one that required legal expertise and a meticulously organized approach. I knew I couldn't just rely on my personal knowledge or informal conversations. To ensure my response was both credible and effective, I needed a solid foundation of legal counsel and a comprehensive, chronologically ordered dossier of all relevant documents. The first step was to schedule a meeting with Mark Reynolds, an employment attorney I had worked with previously on contractual clarifications and labor issues. Mark's reputation for precision and strategic acumen in employment disputes was well known, and I trusted that his expertise would help me navigate the intricacies of the case. I contacted him via email late that afternoon, outlining the situation succinctly and requesting a consultation at the earliest availability. Within 24 hours, we had a meeting confirmed. In preparation for the meeting, I dedicated the next 2 days to assembling all pertinent documentation. My approach was methodical. I created a chronological archive starting from my initial employment contract 6 years ago up to the present moment, including all amendments and addenda. This ensured we could trace the evolution of my terms and conditions, particularly the clauses related to promotion eligibility, severance and non-compete obligations. Next, I gathered all email correspondence between myself, Daniel Harper, HR personnel, and Ethan Harper. These emails included exchanges about mentorship sessions, operational updates, and critically, the series of messages revealing Daniel's instructions to exclude me from key meetings. I carefully printed and digitally archived these conversations, highlighting timestamps and key phrases that illustrated the intentional sidelining. My performance evaluations over the years were another pillar of the dossier. I included quarterly and annual reviews, each signed off by HR and my supervisors, that documented my achievements, leadership skills, and contributions to company goals. These reviews provided an objective, third-party validation of my qualifications and readiness for promotion, underscoring the merit-based foundation that Daniel's decision disregarded. The mentorship logs I maintained for Ethan were particularly important. I compiled detailed training schedules, notes from one-on-one coaching sessions, and feedback emails sent to Ethan and his direct supervisors. These records demonstrated the scope and depth of my investment in his professional development, juxtaposing my extensive experience against his rudimentary understanding of operations. This contrast was crucial to underscore the gap between qualification and actual readiness for the senior role. I also secured payroll and bonus records spanning the last 3 years, focusing on the last fiscal quarter when Ethan's promotion took effect. These financial documents revealed a reallocation of my annual $35,000 bonus to Ethan's compensation package without any board-approved adjustment or proper notification. This irregularity raised flags about unauthorized salary restructuring, which constituted a potential breach of corporate governance. Understanding the sensitivity of system access in operations management, I backed up all logs and records related to system credentials and access controls that I managed exclusively. These technical documents would be vital in illustrating how operational continuity was risked due to Ethan's lack of system permissions and my forced exclusion from critical workflows. Furthermore, I reached out discreetly to 3 trusted colleagues who had witnessed the nepotistic promotion process and Daniel's exclusionary tactics. I requested written statements from them, ensuring they detailed the timeline and nature of events from an objective perspective. Their observations added valuable corroboration to the narrative, providing independent attestations to the procedural irregularities. I organized all these materials into a secure cross-reference digital repository, as well as a physical binder for easy review. Each section was tabbed and annotated with notes summarizing key points, legal provisions, and potential leverage areas. This made navigating the complex dataset efficient for both me and Mark Reynolds when we met. In our consultation, Mark and I reviewed this comprehensive package thoroughly. We analyzed the employment contract clauses, company bylaws, and the employee handbook's anti-nepotism policies to assess the extent of breaches and regulatory violations. Mark advised that the severance clause, combined with the documented exclusion and disregard of promotion policy, provided a robust legal basis to pursue claims. He outlined a strategy that involved initiating formal legal notices, notifying regulatory compliance boards, and preparing for potential negotiations or litigation. I also made note of the non-compete clause tied to severance benefits, This was a critical factor in my planning, as it influenced my options for future employment or legal settlements. Mark emphasized the importance of maintaining detailed communication records going forward, advising me to respond to all company inquiries formally and in writing. Strategically, I understood that leveraging legal, contractual, and regulatory frameworks together increased the chances of a favorable outcome. This multi-pronged approach would not only challenge the promotion decision, but also secure the severance and damages I was contractually entitled to. Additionally, the company's obligation to report nepotism violations to the compliance board added a regulatory dimension that could not be ignored by management. Throughout this process, I remained disciplined, avoiding any impulsive moves or public comments that could undermine my position. The deliberate organization of evidence and alignment with legal counsel were vital to maintaining professionalism and controlling the narrative. My plan was clear: systematically expose the irregularities, enforce contractual rights, and uphold the principles of merit and fairness. In essence, this planning phase was the cornerstone of my professional response. It transformed a personal grievance into a structured, evidence-backed challenge that demanded accountability. As I concluded the preparation and finalized arrangements with Mark Reynolds, I felt confident that the foundation was set. The next steps would be executed with precision, ensuring that the situation was addressed through proper channels and with unwavering professionalism. When I met with Mark Reynolds, I came prepared with an extensively organized dossier that reflected 6 years of meticulous record-keeping. Our discussion began with a detailed review of my original employment contract and the company's employee handbook. Mark's expertise proved invaluable as he carefully dissected each relevant clause, confirming my initial suspicions about multiple breaches related to Ethan Harper's accelerated promotion. The first glaring violation was the company's promotion policy, which explicitly requires a minimum of 2 years' experience in a relevant role before advancing to a senior operations position. Ethan's rapid elevation, only 4 months into his tenure, was a blatant circumvention of this rule. No formal exception had been documented, no justification provided, and no proper approval flow followed. Mark emphasized that skipping such a fundamental policy pointed not only to internal procedural misconduct, but also hinted at potential governance failures at the managerial level. Next, we examined the severance clause embedded within my contract. This clause guarantees a 6-month salary payout if an internal candidate who meets promotion criteria is bypassed in favor of a less qualified individual. Because Ethan's promotion triggered precisely this condition, the absence of any severance offer or discussion in my termination package was a clear contractual breach. Mark noted that Lexington Manufacturing's disregard for this provision exposed the company to significant legal risk, strengthening my position for formal claims. Another critical area we scrutinized was the company's employee handbook, specifically its anti-nepotism policies. The handbook outlines strict requirements for disclosure, transparency, and compliance when family members are involved in leadership decisions. These policies exist not only to prevent favoritism, but also to ensure regulatory adherence, particularly under SEC guidelines. Mark pointed out that Daniel Harper had circumvented these rules by promoting his son without any documented disclosure or compliance board notification, constituting a regulatory violation that could trigger external investigations. To illustrate the operational risks, I presented technical diagrams and system architecture schematics detailing critical process controls and access dependencies. As the operations manager, I controlled exclusive credentials and system permissions, essential for maintaining workflow integrity. Mark agreed that Ethan's lack of access, combined with his inexperience, increased the likelihood of operational disruptions, a point that bolstered claims of managerial negligence and potential sabotage under the guise of nepotism. We then reviewed the email evidence I had compiled. Among the most damning were communications revealing Daniel's intentional exclusion of me from key meetings about operational strategy and the promotion decision. Mark highlighted how these emails demonstrated a deliberate effort to sideline me professionally, potentially to avoid objections or scrutiny about the irregular promotion. This exclusion not only violated company norms regarding transparency, but could also be interpreted as a breach of fiduciary duty. Mark also examined the financial records I provided, which showed a reallocation of my $35,000 annual bonus to Ethan's compensation without any board approval or formal documentation. This unauthorized salary adjustment was not just a financial irregularity, but also a violation of corporate governance standards. It introduced questions about whether Daniel was manipulating budget lines to favor his son, potentially exposing the company to internal audit findings or regulatory penalties. We discussed the strategic implications of these interconnected breaches. Mark advised that this combination of contractual violations, governance failures, and regulatory non-compliance formed a comprehensive legal and professional case. He emphasized that the severance clause alone, when combined with documented nepotism and procedural violations, constituted a solid foundation for formal legal action. Importantly, Mark cautioned that the company's failure to disclose nepotism to the compliance board exposed Lexington Manufacturing to penalties and could amplify the severity of any regulatory sanctions. Given that nepotism policies are not merely internal guidelines, but often tied to public company disclosures and SEC regulations, this breach could trigger external investigations beyond internal HR processes. To strengthen our position, Mark recommended we leverage the mentorship documentation I maintained. My records clearly demonstrated that I invested over 120 hours training Ethan, underscoring the significant disparity in experience and readiness for senior responsibilities. This reinforced the argument that Ethan's promotion was premature and unmerited, further invalidating Daniel's decision on professional grounds. We also reviewed the non-compete clause in my contract, which is tied directly to severance payments. Understanding this was crucial for planning subsequent negotiations and potential litigation. Mark stressed the importance of preserving complete communication records and responding only through legal counsel moving forward to prevent any inadvertent weakening of my position. As our meeting concluded, Mark and I agreed that a multi-pronged approach was necessary, combining contractual enforcement, legal claims, and regulatory reporting. Every piece of evidence, the contracts, the emails, the financials, the mentorship logs, and system access records, would be assembled into a formal dossier for submission to the company's compliance board, the State Labor Department, and, if necessary, the courts. This phase of building the legal and professional case transformed the situation from a personal grievance into a systematic challenge against procedural and contractual breaches. It underscored how maintaining professionalism, methodical documentation, and legal consultation could collectively construct an airtight position. Leaving the meeting, I felt assured that the strategy was robust. The layers of documented violations gave me significant leverage. My next steps would be deliberate and measured, ensuring that every communication and action aligned with the plan Mark outlined. This was not about revenge or retaliation. It was a calculated pursuit of justice to uphold the principles of meritocracy, contractual integrity, and corporate governance. The groundwork was laid for a formal, evidence-backed challenge that could not easily be dismissed. The case against the nepotistic promotion was clear, built on facts, supported by law, and ready for the procedural battles ahead. After finalizing my dossier with Mark Reynolds, we agreed the next step was to serve formal legal notices to Daniel Harper and the Human Resources Department, outlining the specific breaches of contract and violations of company policies and regulatory standards. We drafted a comprehensive legal notice that explicitly cited the promotion policy infractions, particularly the disregard for the mandatory 2-year experience prerequisite and the contractual severance clause that had been ignored. The notice also detailed the failure to disclose nepotism to the Corporate Compliance Board, a breach of both company bylaws and Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) regulations, given Lexington Manufacturing's public status. Serving this notice was a deliberate, calculated move. It was not merely a complaint. It was a formal initiation of dispute resolution processes, signaling that I was prepared to escalate the matter through legal and regulatory channels if necessary. The notice was delivered via certified mail and email, ensuring verifiable receipt by Daniel and HR. We retained delivery confirmations and read receipts as part of the evidence chain. Parallel to this, I filed formal complaints with the company's corporate compliance board and lodged grievances with the state labor department. The compliance board complaint highlighted the nepotism violations and failure to adhere to promotion protocols, referencing internal policies requiring transparent practice and external regulatory obligations. The state labor department grievance focused on the contractual severance denial and unfair labor practices related to the bypassing of an internal candidate. These filings were meticulously documented, with copies archived and logged chronologically. Understanding that operational stability was at risk, I also reached out discreetly to key clients with long-standing relationships. Through professional correspondence, I alerted them to emerging risks related to operational leadership transitions and system access limitations without disclosing sensitive internal conflicts. This proactive communication was intended to manage client expectations and maintain trust, while subtly underscoring the seriousness of the situation. I ensured all client communications were in writing and filed appropriately. At the same time, I maintained a strict professional demeanor in all interactions with company representatives. When HR or management personnel contacted me, I responded promptly but formally, often directing them to communicate through my attorney. Every conversation, email or phone call was logged with dates, times and summaries of the content. This rigorous documentation was critical to prevent misrepresentation and to build an unassailable factual record. During this period, I also secured an accepted offer for a senior operations role at a competitor firm, Riverstone Technologies. The new position came with a 20% salary increase and included equity options, positioning me well for long-term career growth. I deliberately withheld announcing this new employment publicly, as maintaining discretion was essential to preserve leverage and avoid premature escalation. The offer was a backup plan, but also a statement of my market value and professional standing beyond Lexington Manufacturing. In addition, I reviewed and stored all system credential backups and access logs, ensuring I had immutable records of my exclusive control over critical operational systems. This technical evidence would be vital should operational disruptions occur, or if the company attempted to undermine my claims by pointing to supposed operational failures. I anticipated that the company might argue Ethan was capable and that my departure created gaps, so I prepared counter-evidence illustrating the risks inherent in the unauthorized access changes. Strategically, I monitored internal communications and organizational movements closely. I maintained contact with the 3 colleagues who had provided witness statements, ensuring they remained informed yet discreet. Their corroboration was an essential part of the mosaic, reinforcing that the nepotistic promotion was widely perceived as irregular and damaging. The culmination of these actions set the stage for significant professional consequences. By formally invoking contractual rights and regulatory requirements, I not only protected my own interests, but forced the company to confront the systemic governance failures. The legal notices and complaints imposed a procedural obligation on Lexington Manufacturing's leadership to respond, investigate, and potentially remediate the violations. At this juncture, I was fully aware that the situation was precarious but under control. My methodical documentation, legal counsel's guidance, and strategic communications ensured that every step I took advanced the case professionally and legally. The groundwork was laid for a systematic challenge that would ripple through the company's compliance structures, financial reporting, and operational stability. Rather than reacting impulsively or emotionally, I maintained a disciplined focus on evidence and process. My professional conduct remained impeccable, reinforcing my credibility internally and externally. I was not merely contesting a promotion. I was asserting the principles of contractual fidelity, meritocracy, and corporate accountability. As I moved forward, I remained vigilant, knowing that Daniel Harper and Lexington Manufacturing would be compelled to respond. The formal notices and regulatory complaints were not just documents, they were instruments of professional pressure designed to trigger governance mechanisms and potential financial liabilities. The strategic deployment of these tools marked the transition from passive victim to active agent in reclaiming my rightful professional standing. The next phase would test both the company's commitment to its own policies and the resilience of my carefully assembled case. I was prepared for the ensuing challenges, confident that the firm foundation of legality, documentation, and professionalism I had established would sustain me through the complex process ahead. Within 2 weeks of Ethan stepping into the senior operations role, the consequences of his inexperience under Daniel's nepotistic promotion became starkly apparent. Operational stability began to falter in ways I had anticipated, but could only confirm through objective analysis. System failures increased noticeably. Downtime incidents rose by 18% compared to the prior quarter, and several critical production reports arrived late or were incomplete. These delays disrupted scheduling downstream and triggered client complaints about shipment reliability. Despite my absence, my operational monitoring tools remained active. I had set up automated dashboards and alerts that tracked key performance indicators, even after my role had been reassigned. Reviewing these metrics daily, I noted that Ethan's unfamiliarity with core system permissions and process nuances was causing repeated bottlenecks. For example, access restrictions I had maintained on sensitive control modules prevented him from executing necessary adjustments promptly. This created cascading errors that maintenance and logistics teams struggled to resolve efficiently. Simultaneously, client communications began reflecting uncertainty. I received discreet inquiries from several long-standing clients, questioning the department's reliability and asking if leadership changes might affect delivery commitments. I responded professionally, confirming that internal reviews were underway to ensure continuity, but carefully avoiding any detailed disclosures. All correspondence was meticulously logged and archived, knowing that preserving a factual record of these interactions could later support my case by evidencing operational risk perceptions tied to the management transition. Internally, the situation precipitated unease within the workforce. Several team leads reached out privately, expressing concerns about the abrupt changes and Ethan's lack of hands-on experience. While maintaining confidentiality, I recorded summaries of these conversations, noting specific operational challenges cited, such as delayed approvals and unclear escalation paths. These informal reports provided additional corroboration of the operational disruptions tied to the promotion. The Corporate Compliance Board responded promptly to the nepotism complaint we had filed. They initiated an official investigation into Daniel's promotion decision and the associated governance violations. I was formally contacted to provide detailed testimony and submit all supporting documentation previously gathered. I coordinated closely with my attorney, Mark Reynolds, preparing precise fact-based statements that underscored the procedural irregularities and contractual breaches. Our submissions emphasized the direct link between the nepotistic promotion and the compromised operational integrity, strengthening the board's case for sanctions. Meanwhile, the company's human resources department, evidently rattled by the unfolding investigation and operational setbacks, reached out through multiple channels. I received a formal call and several emails requesting a confidential consultation to discuss potential resolutions and to keep disruptions minimal. I responded with a professional written refusal, directing them to channel all communications through my legal counsel. Each contact was documented with timestamps and content summaries, ensuring a clear audit trail free from misinterpretation. Inside Lexington Manufacturing, leaked internal emails began circulating among select staff, revealing management's growing anxiety. Phrases like urgent risk assessment and damage control measures appeared frequently, painting a picture of escalating concern. These leaks indirectly validated the severity of the situation without requiring further insider testimony. I incorporated these leaked communications into my dossier as further evidence of the company's acknowledgement of operational and governance failures resulting from Daniel's decisions. Ethan's limitations as a senior operations leader became increasingly visible. Without the critical system access credentials I had controlled, he was forced to escalate routine issues unnecessarily, causing workflow delays. His lack of institutional knowledge meant that process deviations went uncorrected, and key operational decisions were deferred or mishandled. These weaknesses not only raised red flags internally, but also jeopardized client relationships and contractual obligations. Throughout this period, I maintained a posture of calm professionalism, Rather than publicly criticizing or exposing the company's internal difficulties, I confined my actions to documented legal and regulatory channels. I continued to monitor operational metrics and client feedback discreetly, prepared to escalate matters if the company failed to address the breaches or compensate me appropriately. My strategic patience was grounded in the certainty that the mounting operational failures would increase pressure on management to resolve the dispute. As operational disruptions mounted and regulatory scrutiny intensified, the corporate atmosphere shifted palpably. Daniel's attempts to downplay the situation through informal communications with senior leaders were undermined by the objective data and growing client dissatisfaction. The initial shock of the nepotistic promotion was evolving into a tangible crisis, exposing vulnerabilities in leadership and governance that could not be ignored. This phase underscored the importance of documented evidence and measured responses. By systematically collecting performance data, client communications, internal reports, and regulatory filings, I ensured that every aspect of the unfolding crisis was traceable and attributable to the root cause, the violation of company policy and contractual standards represented by Ethan's unwarranted promotion. The accumulated evidence not only supported my legal case, but also highlighted operational risks that stakeholders could no longer overlook. While the company grappled with these challenges, I focused on preserving my professional integrity and preparing for the next moves in this complex contest. The environment remained tense but manageable, and the groundwork laid through careful documentation and legal counsel poised me to leverage the situation toward a resolution aligned with contractual justice and operational accountability. Simultaneously with the unfolding operational crises and compliance investigations, I initiated formal legal action to assert my contractual rights and seek appropriate remedies. Working closely with Mark Reynolds, my employment attorney, we prepared a comprehensive lawsuit that articulated the specific breaches and damages. The claim demanded payment of the $118,000 severance stipulated in my employment contracts clause, protecting internal candidates bypassed for promotion, plus an additional $50,000 in damages. These damages accounted for lost bonuses directly diverted to Ethan Harper and the reputational harm inflicted by Daniel Harper's actions, which impeded my career progression and professional standing. Filing the lawsuit was a deliberate strategic step, carefully timed as the Compliance Board's inquiry gained momentum. The complaint detailed several critical points: the violation of the company's promotion policy requiring 2 years relevant experience, the failure to honor contractual severance obligations, unauthorized salary and bonus reallocations, and the company's non-compliance with anti-nepotism provisions mandated by both internal bylaws and federal regulatory frameworks. We also pointed to documented evidence of exclusion from operational meetings, which illustrated a breach of fiduciary duty and professional marginalization. As the lawsuit was officially filed with the state labor court, its effects rippled quickly through Lexington Manufacturing. The Compliance Board expanded its investigation beyond the initial nepotism claim, uncovering additional governance violations and procedural irregularities tied to Daniel Harper's tenure as department director. This amplification of scrutiny increased pressure on company leadership, elevating the issue from a personnel dispute to a potential corporate governance crisis. The operational dysfunction under Ethan's stewardship became increasingly undeniable. Automated system monitoring revealed that critical workflows suffered from delayed approvals and incomplete data submissions, resulting in client complaints and jeopardizing key contracts. Several long-standing clients formally raised concerns with company executives, citing decreased reliability and inconsistent communication, which in turn threatened future business. This client attrition underscored the tangible impact of the nepotistic promotion and operational mismanagement. Daniel Harper's attempts to mitigate the situation failed to stem the tide. Internal communications leaked to senior executives disclosed growing apprehension about the department's performance and legal exposure. Daniel reached out repeatedly to my attorney, proposing settlement discussions intended to quiet the escalating disputes. However, I declined all offers for premature resolution, instructing my legal team to maintain a firm stance until all contractual and regulatory violations were fully addressed. My response was clear and unwavering. My lawyers will be in touch. This professional deferral maintained my position's strength while preventing unguarded concessions. The convergence of legal pressure, regulatory investigations, and operational setbacks created a tightening noose around Daniel's leadership. His failure to disclose nepotism as required by SEC guidelines and company policy not only exposed Lexington Manufacturing to penalties, but also cast doubt on the integrity of its governance. The lawsuit and compliance complaints served as catalysts, triggering broader internal audits that further implicated Daniel in governance failures. Meanwhile, the lawsuit's detailed documentation underscored my exclusive control over critical system access credentials, which had been withheld from Ethan. This technical evidence highlighted operational risks and lent weight to claims of negligence and professional sabotage under Daniel's direction. The combination of contractual breaches and operational consequences presented a compelling case that could not be ignored by company stakeholders or regulators. Throughout this phase, I maintained a strict professional demeanor, avoiding public commentary or emotional reactions. All communications with company representatives were channeled through legal counsel, ensuring that every interaction was documented and consistent with the legal strategy. This disciplined approach reinforced my credibility and helped preserve leverage during settlement negotiations and regulatory proceedings. The mounting challenges forced Lexington Manufacturing into a defensive posture. The company was compelled to engage with regulatory bodies and labor authorities under heightened scrutiny, while internally managing the fallout from client losses and operational disruptions. The situation's complexity underscored how nepotistic practices and breaches of corporate governance can cascade into multifaceted crises, affecting legal standing, financial stability, and market reputation. As the professional and legal noose tightened, it became clear that the principles of meritocracy, contractual fidelity, and corporate accountability were being rigorously enforced. The lawsuit and regulatory inquiries were not isolated actions, but integral components of a comprehensive challenge to systemic irregularities. My strategic patience, meticulous documentation, and legal acumen ensured that the case advanced steadily, setting a precedent for addressing nepotism and contractual violations in complex corporate environments. While the immediate future remained uncertain, the professional framework I had constructed, anchored in legal claims, regulatory compliance, and operational evidence, positioned me advantageously. The pressure on company leadership escalated daily, and the formal proceedings I had initiated promised to redefine the company's approach to governance and fairness. The stakes were high, and the contest was intensifying, but my course was deliberate, steady, and grounded in unwavering professionalism. Daniel Harper's position at Lexington Manufacturing rapidly deteriorated as the investigations and operational fallout intensified. Within days of the Compliance Board's formal inquiry expanding its scope, the company's board of directors convened emergency sessions to assess the impact of the nepotism scandal and the mounting legal liabilities. The board's confidence in Daniel plummeted, and he was suspended from his role as department director, pending a full internal and regulatory investigation. Official statements cited serious governance concerns and procedural irregularities, a euphemism that masked the gravity of his missteps. Almost immediately, Lexington Manufacturing disclosed to regulators that it was under investigation for violations of corporate governance policies, specifically relating to nepotism and unauthorized financial reallocations. The company faced a regulatory fine, projected to total approximately $500,000, reflecting penalties for failing to adhere to anti-nepotism guidelines, improper disclosure omissions, and breaches of fiduciary duties. This fine was not only a substantial financial blow, but also a public relations crisis, signaling to investors and stakeholders that the company's internal controls were inadequate. The situation triggered talk within the company of potential board restructuring. Several non-executive directors voiced concerns about conflicts of interest within the Harper family's influence over governance processes. Proposals surfaced to establish independent oversight committees to review promotions, salary adjustments, and compliance reporting going forward. While these discussions were preliminary, The pressure to reform was unmistakably mounting, reflecting a corporate culture forced to confront its shortcomings. Media outlets within the manufacturing sector quickly picked up on the story. Industry publications ran exposés detailing the nepotism scandal, focusing on how Daniel Harper's decisions had compromised operational integrity and governance standards. Articles highlighted the contrast between my documented 6 years of diligent service and Ethan's abrupt promotion after mere months, underscoring the ethical and professional breaches at the heart of the controversy. Headlines framed the episode as a cautionary tale about the risks of unchecked familial influence in corporate leadership. Daniel's personal and professional reputation suffered irreparable damage. Insider reports indicated that his corporate license was flagged for review by professional associations monitoring ethical standards in executive management. Colleagues distanced themselves, and former allies within the company's leadership avoided public association with him. Daniel's credibility was further undermined when additional employees came forward with allegations of preferential treatment and governance lapses under his tenure, expanding the scope of the scandal beyond my case. The ripple effects extended beyond professional spheres. The public nature of the investigation coincided with Daniel's ongoing divorce proceedings, which grew complicated as financial disclosures from the company were scrutinized in court. These disclosures favored my claims, revealing the unauthorized salary and bonus reallocations and exposing Daniel's unilateral decisions affecting corporate finances. The intersection of legal, financial, and personal turmoil added layers of pressure that no doubt influenced Daniel's standing both inside and outside the company. Internally, morale at Lexington Manufacturing suffered. Employees expressed frustration and uncertainty about leadership stability, contributing to increased attrition in key operations roles. The company's stock price declined approximately 12% over the course of several weeks, reflecting investor concern about governance failures and potential regulatory sanctions. Analysts cited the nepotism scandal and ensuing legal battles as damaging Lexington's market confidence, emphasizing the tangible financial consequences of governance breakdowns. Throughout this turbulent period, I maintained a composed and professional stance. My focus remained on the integrity of the process and ensuring that the documented evidence I had diligently compiled continued to guide proceedings. I continued to liaise with my legal team to monitor the investigation's progress and prepare for potential settlement negotiations or trial proceedings. Every interaction with company representatives or regulators was carefully handled, with strict adherence to protocol and documentation standards. The mounting consequences for Daniel and Lexington Manufacturing underscored the effectiveness of a strategic, evidence-based approach to addressing corporate nepotism and contractual violations. The situation demonstrated how systematic documentation, legal recourse, and regulatory engagement can collectively dismantle entrenched malpractice at executive levels. While the case was far from resolved, the initial professional and financial repercussions were profound and signaled that accountability mechanisms within corporate governance were being activated. This phase of the dispute not only exposed critical vulnerabilities within Lexington Manufacturing's leadership, but also served as a cautionary example to the wider industry. It highlighted the importance of transparency, adherence to contractual obligations, and regulatory compliance in maintaining operational stability and investor confidence. The professional and legal pressure mounted steadily, reinforcing the necessity of meritocratic principles in corporate promotions and financial governance. As Daniel faced suspension, regulatory penalties, and widespread reputational damage, the company's path forward included difficult decisions about leadership restructuring and cultural reform. Meanwhile, the professional atmosphere remained charged but underpinned by a growing recognition that systemic change was essential. The outcomes of the investigations and legal actions would shape Lexington Manufacturing's governance policies for years to come. In the midst of these developments, I remained steadfast in my commitment to professionalism, documenting every step and maintaining focus on the legal and contractual framework that supported my claims. The repercussions unfolding around Daniel Harper were a testament to the power of a methodical, strategic challenge to nepotistic wrongdoing, one grounded in facts, law, and unwavering professional standards. The process was ongoing, and the stakes high, but the trajectory was clear. Accountability was no longer optional in the face of clear evidence and principled action. The judicial process unfolded over several months, marked by careful hearings, extensive documentation submissions, and expert testimonies. Throughout, I remained focused on presenting a coherent, fact-based narrative supported by the exhaustive dossier my legal team and I had compiled. The court recognized the clear contractual breaches and governance failures evident in Lexington Manufacturing's handling of my employment and promotion processes. Ultimately, the judgment awarded me $175,000 in back pay and damages, a figure that combined unpaid severance, lost bonuses, and compensation for reputational harm. Importantly, the court also mandated full severance benefits, as stipulated in my original employment contract, 6 months' salary plus continuation of health benefits, reinforcing the binding nature of contractual protections against unfair promotion practices. This decision affirmed not only my individual claims, but also underscored the enforceability of promotion and severance policies designed to protect long-term employees from arbitrary sidelining. Parallel to the court's judgment, the Corporate Compliance Board, acting on the formal complaints we had filed, conducted a thorough investigation into Lexington Manufacturing's governance practices. Their inquiry corroborated the nepotism violations we documented, particularly the failure to disclose Ethan Harper's promotion and the circumvention of internal promotion policies. As a result, the board imposed a $600,000 fine on the company for these regulatory breaches. This fine was substantial and reflected the severity of governance lapses, sending a clear message that anti-nepotism policies are not merely procedural formalities, but critical safeguards for corporate integrity. The Compliance Board also mandated the implementation of company-wide anti-nepotism training and strict reforms to the promotion approval process. These measures aim to prevent recurrence by institutionalizing transparency and accountability in personnel decisions. As part of their directive, Lexington Manufacturing was required to install an independent oversight committee to review all future promotions and compensation adjustments, a structural change designed to minimize conflicts of interest and reinforce merit-based advancement. Daniel Harper faced additional professional consequences. The board's findings, combined with legal scrutiny, led to his blacklisting from executive roles within the manufacturing industry. His reputation, already tarnished by the lawsuit and operational failures under his supervision, was effectively irreparable in professional circles. This outcome highlighted the tangible risks executives face when prioritizing personal interests over corporate governance standards and contractual fidelity. Meanwhile, Lexington Manufacturing underwent significant organizational restructuring. The board initiated a comprehensive review of its leadership and governance frameworks, seeking to restore investor confidence and operational stability. External consultants were brought in to audit internal controls, compliance mechanisms, and ethical standards. These reforms were publicly communicated to shareholders and industry stakeholders, signaling a commitment to remediate governance breakdowns and rebuild organizational trust. From a personal career perspective, the legal and regulatory victories strengthened my professional standing. My new role at Riverstone Technologies included not only a 20% salary increase, but also stock options, aligning my compensation with long-term company performance and shareholder value. Additionally, I received an $8,000 signing bonus recognizing my market value and the expertise I brought to the new organization. These tangible benefits validated my strategic decision to pursue professional justice while maintaining composure and professionalism. The broader industry took note of this case as well. In professional forums and corporate governance conferences, my experience was cited as a precedent, underscoring the importance of enforcing anti-nepotism policies and contractual obligations. Legal experts and HR professionals referenced the case in discussions about best practices for promotion transparency and employee protections. This recognition highlighted how individual strategic action can catalyze systemic change beyond a single company. Colleagues and professional networks commended the measured, evidence-driven approach I employed. My refusal to engage in emotional disputes and my reliance on documentation and legal frameworks served as a blueprint for others facing similar challenges. This professional endorsement reinforced the value of strategic patience and adherence to process in resolving workplace conflicts rooted in nepotism and governance failures. While the material outcomes were significant, the case also contributed to an evolving conversation about corporate ethics and meritocracy. It exemplified how clear documentation, legal acumen, and regulatory engagement can confront and dismantle entrenched favoritism. The legal and compliance verdicts together constituted a dual validation of contractual rights and governance commitments, reinforcing the imperative for companies to uphold transparent, merit-based human resource practices. At this phase, the situation remained dynamic, with ongoing adjustments at Lexington Manufacturing and continued oversight to ensure compliance with mandated reforms. My focus continued to be on advancing my career with integrity and leveraging lessons learned to mentor others on navigating complex professional environments. The case was a testament to the power of strategic professional response to injustice, emphasizing that measured, legally grounded action can prevail over nepotistic practices within corporate structures. In summary, the court's award, the compliance board's fines, and the organizational reforms collectively represented a multifaceted victory, not only securing rightful compensation, but also enforcing industry-wide standards of fairness and accountability. The repercussions extended beyond individual restitution, reshaping governance norms and reinforcing the principle that professional merit and contractual fidelity must guide corporate advancement decisions. This ongoing impact affirmed the effectiveness of a disciplined, methodical approach to overcoming systemic workplace injustices. Now that I've settled into my role at Riverstone Technologies as Senior Operations Director, the contrast with my previous experience at Lexington Manufacturing is both stark and instructive. At Riverstone, my annual salary stands at $142,000, accompanied by 1.5% equity in the company. Compensation that not only reflects my expertise, but also aligns my interests with the company's long-term growth. This equity stake provides a tangible incentive to lead with both operational excellence and strategic vision, a responsibility I embrace fully. The financial recognition here affirms the value of my years of dedication and the professional integrity I maintain through the challenges at Lexington. Leadership at Riverstone is markedly different. I command a team of 40 diverse professionals, many with extensive industry experience, and I have cultivated an environment built on transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement. My leadership style emphasizes collaborative problem-solving and data-driven decision-making, principles I refined through my prior operational successes and the lessons learned from my previous employer's governance failures. The respect I receive from my team is grounded in consistent communication, clear expectations, and recognition of their contributions, factors that directly impact retention and morale. From a workflow perspective, I've instituted standardized documentation protocols and transparent performance tracking systems. These processes ensure that operational metrics are monitored in real time, risk factors are flagged early, and all stakeholders have access to accurate data. This meticulous approach not only optimizes efficiency, but also builds trust internally and externally. Reflecting on the importance of documentation from my earlier ordeal, I've made it a cornerstone of our operational culture here, underscoring that professionalism and accountability are inseparable. Beyond the numbers, my work-life balance has improved significantly at Riverstone. The company's culture encourages sustainable workloads and flexible schedules, enabling me to maintain my professional energy and focus. This balance is essential for long-term leadership effectiveness and personal well-being, aspects I had to reassess after the protracted legal and regulatory battle at Lexington. I now find renewed motivation in the ability to lead without the distractions of nepotistic politics and governance irregularities. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, I recognize that the key to navigating such a complex challenge lay in my commitment to meticulous documentation and a thorough understanding of contractual rights. From the start, I ensured that every email, performance report, and mentorship log was recorded systematically. This comprehensive evidence base became the foundation of my strategic response, enabling my attorney and me to assert my rights effectively. The rigor of this documentation process was vital, not only in building my case, but also in preserving my professional credibility throughout the dispute. Strategic patience also proved essential. At no point did I allow frustration or emotion to dictate my actions. Every communication was measured. Every decision was aligned with legal advice and professional norms. This disciplined approach ensured that I maintained control over the narrative and avoided pitfalls that might have weakened my position. In a corporate environment rife with interpersonal complexities, such detachment is often the difference between a protracted conflict and a resolution grounded in justice. Most importantly, the ordeal affirmed my belief that professional competence and integrity ultimately prevail, even in the face of nepotism and systemic bias. By exposing the violations of company policy and contractual obligations, I not only secured fair compensation, but also contributed to systemic reforms benefiting current and future employees. The anti-nepotism training and governance restructuring at Lexington stand as testament to how methodical, evidence-based action can catalyze organizational change. My competence has been validated repeatedly, not merely by the legal and regulatory outcomes, but by the trust and respect I continue to earn in my new role. I am now in a position to mentor others facing similar challenges, sharing insights on navigating corporate politics with professionalism and strategy. The experience underscored that workplace integrity requires vigilance, documentation, and strategic foresight. In conclusion, while the path was arduous, the process illuminated critical lessons about the power of preparation, contractual knowledge, and professional detachment. Nepotism was not only exposed, but decisively penalized, and I emerged stronger, with a career trajectory aligned to merit and leadership excellence. This journey reinforced that integrity and strategy are not just abstract principles, they are practical tools for prevailing in complex corporate battles.